Welcome to my channel on the best of fantasy. Let's talk about some SPFBO champions. Now, if you're not familiar with SPFBO, it's the self-published fantasy blog of a contest founded by Mark Lawrence, the author, Mark Lawrence, to shine a light on some brilliant self-published fantasy. And it has done just that. Over the last decade, there have been 10 champions that have emerged every year from among 300 entries. And it has been my privilege to be a judge for this contest in two of the prior years, as well as this year's Champions League, the Champion of Champions. This has been a really fun thing to be part of. And I want to thank Mark Lawrence for allowing me to be a judge for this contest. I'm going to be stepping down as a judge in order to give myself more time to do my own writing and also to get to some of the other self-published books that I have on my shelves that have been waiting for me. But I just want to express how much I appreciate, how much I really have learned from being part of this contest and being exposed to all kinds of wonderful books that I never would have read otherwise. I'm really grateful for that experience, and I hope that I contributed to the contest in the 2 years that I was a judge, and for this year's Champions League as well. I just feel very privileged to have been part of it. So big thank you to Mark Lawrence, to the other judges, and I urge any one of you who is watching this video to be involved in the contest. There is a really wonderful community. And that's something that I've said in the past, but I think it bears repeating. It's not so much a contest as a community of people who support each other, authors who support each other, fans of fantasy who support each other, fans who are willing to give self-published fantasy a try and discover many times that there are some really great stories being produced. In fact, I would argue that there's room for more creativity in the self-published wing of fantasy. So, yeah, I urge people to get involved, and you can do that. There's a Facebook page that's dedicated to SPFBO where you can be part of the community. Also, Mark Lawrence gives updates on his blog all the time. So these are places where you can find out what's going on, the latest news and the contest and that sort of thing. But yeah, it's really a wonderful thing, and it is growing by leaps and bounds every year. So I guess enough about that, but let's talk about the last three. I've already judged, and you can see all of this on Mark Lawrence's blog or on Facebook, but I've already judged 7 of the champions, and these are the final 3 for me. This is it. So I'm going to be talking about these last 3 champions from the past, and then I'll be, at the end of it, putting my whole ranking out there. I will review the ones I've already ranked and place these 3 within the 10. And just so you know how it works, the one that gets the most love from all 10 judges or panels of judges will be the champion of champions. And I do want to say, though, that this has been very hard because all of these books are champions for a reason. They're all fantastic. And this has been the hardest thing I've done for SPFBO, actually, is to rate these 10. I've loved every one of them for different reasons. And it's been just very difficult to say this one is better than this one, or yeah, there's some subjectivity for sure. Now, as a judge, I try to put my own biases aside. And 2 of the books that I'm about to talk about, one is a romantasy. That's not my jam. The other is a cozy fantasy. That is even less something that I would naturally go to, which is one of the things I'm very grateful for, because I read these books and I recognize the things that they do really well. So all that is to say, these are all champions. Wherever I put these in my ranking, I'm trying to do on the basis of how well do these books accomplish what they're trying to do, not my own personal biases. This is about the books. It's not about me. In other words, that's how I operate as a judge to the degree that I can. I try to set aside my biases. So anyway, here goes. Here are the books. The first one that I'm going to talk about is called Reign and Ruin, and it's by J.D. Evans. This one I listened to on audiobook. And I want to say right from the get-go that the has two narrators. They did a fantastic job, I have to say. The narrators were really just great for this, in the range of voices they could do, how pleasant it was to listen to their voices. Very accomplished. I think they're both actors, and you can tell the delivery was really just fantastic for this audiobook. Now, having said that, let's talk about the book itself, the story. It's a romantasy, and it is inspired very much by the Middle East. You can feel that all over the place. One of the main characters, the central character, really, I think in many ways, is Naime, and she is a sultana, a princess, the daughter of the sultan of one of the kingdoms there, one of these two rival kingdoms that we're mainly focused on in this story. And she's brilliant. She is... you could describe her as not ambitious. It almost sounds like a negative thing, but she is ambitious in a good way. You know, she ambitious for not herself, I guess you could say. She's ambitious for her kingdom. She wants to do right by her people. She is potentially a strong leader, but there's opposition within her kingdom as her father is aging. There are other powers that she has to contend with within her kingdom with different interests. And it's something to see her negotiate all of this. This is a big part of her journey. I found her to be a very compelling character. And she's young and just trying to work her way into power, essentially. But we definitely sympathize with Naime. The other character is from that rival kingdom, and his name is Makram, and he is a prince. He is a younger brother to the ruler over there. And a big part of his story is the kind of magic. Now, Naime also, by the way, is a magic user, and there are different types of houses with different sorts of magic, which is a fun part of this thing to find out about, the magic. But Makram, unfortunately for him, his magic is of a type that is seen as really bad, as is the outcast kind of magic. I won't say too much about it because we're going to avoid spoilers here, but suffice to say that he is someone who's familiar with prejudice, despite being of a high status. So he also is concerned about not just the rivalry between the kingdoms, but there is a bigger threat coming from outside. There is an imperial acquisitive power that is aggressively making encroachments and is threatening both of these kingdoms. And that imperial power rests upon their technological superiority. They are a technologically driven culture, whereas the two kingdoms that have traditionally been rivals with each other, they're magic-using kingdoms, but their magic has been on the wane because of their own warring and whatnot. So this is a series, I think this is, by the way, book one of a series, and you can tell that in the series overall, the big clash is going to be between this seeking to restore the magic of the past versus this technologically driven, acquisitive, aggressive empire. So I think that's where it's going. But you don't get much at all of the imperial stuff in here. It's just sort of a looming threat. The big thing here is the romance, really. That's the center of this story. And you know, at least my stereotype, I guess, of romantasy is that you know that the two characters are going to get together. You know that's going to happen. That's almost inevitable. But the skill in telling a story like this, it lies in, well, how does it happen? How do we keep the tension since the reader knows what's going to happen? We know there's going to be some bodice ripping and all of that sort of thing. But how do you keep the tension in a story? And I think that J.D. Evans does that really, really well, actually. The ebb and flow, the coming close, almost in a dance, and then no, it's not going to happen now, and then, sort of that build up, that kind of thing. At least that's my idea of how romantasy works. I'm not well read in the genre, but I found J.D. Evans to be very skillful in this. So yeah, high praise from me for Reign and Ruin. Okay, let me give you an idea of the next book that I read, and it is called Small Miracles, and I read the physical for this one, and it's by Olivia Atwater, also a past champion, also very much deserving of that status. Now this is the cozy, in case you couldn't tell by the cupcake on the cover, this is the cozy fantasy, and it has some really playfully incorporated elements of kind of Judeo-Christian ideas about angels and fallen angels and that sort of thing. And you have this main character named Gadriel, not Gabriel, but Gadriel. We've got to get that right. There's a sort of a running joke in there about that. But Gadriel is the fallen angel of petty temptations. So, like eating chocolate and that kind of thing. And Gadriel accepts a mission, and a seemingly innocuous mission, actually, and one that is the motivation here is to cancel a debt for Gadriel. So Gadriel is a fallen angel, but not a particularly scary one. Seems like a pretty decent. Depending on the moment, Gadriel can take the form of a woman or a man or what have you, because Gadriel is an angel. So yeah, there's some really fun, I think, slippage of gender going on in here as well. That's I think a cool element of this story. But yeah, Gadriel accepts this innocuous mission to tempt a woman named Holly Harker. Now, Holly is going through some stuff, and she is a seemingly joyless and also sinless woman, and the mission is to try to get her to do some little petty sins in order to inject some joy in her life. So it's actually a good mission, if you will. So yeah, and of course there are lots of cupcakes in here and chocolate and cozy cafes and that kind of thing. But I think more importantly, there's some heartfelt handling of themes like loss and grief and all the emotions that come with those things, including regret and guilt, and also the notion that little joys in life can give it meaning, particularly in difficult times. So this story really, I think, does a pretty brilliant job of dealing with things like depression and loss and friendship and love. So I found it to be a very emotional experience, actually, reading Small Miracles. I have to admit, I got a little teared up here and there in the course of reading this one. So yeah, hats off to Olivia Atwater for producing really a quick read too, by the way. Not very long, but definitely cozy, and with some really wonderful emotional beats in there. And finally, the last book that I read for the Champions League is Where Loyalties Lie, and obviously I read the physical for this one as well. This is by Rob J. Hayes. It is the first book in the Best Laid Plans duology, which is also, by the way, part of a broader series. I think there's a trilogy that precedes this. You can read this without having read the trilogy, which I did, and the story makes perfect sense. So that's not really an issue too much, although I'll come back to that in a bit. But essentially, it is a piratical, grimdark fantasy, and buckles are most definitely swashed in the course of this story. Rob J. Hayes has a great voice. He's one of these writers who can do a dialogue really well, kind of snarky, humorous characters and that kind of thing. It reminds me a bit of, The Lies of Locke Lamora or that kind of thing. So he's really good at that. And you have this self-aggrandizing main character named Drake Morass, and he's a pirate. He's a pirate captain, very self-aggrandizing, famous for his ambition, and he wants to become the king of the pirates. But he has a few things that he has to do first. One of them is that the Oracle has declared that he needs a fellow pirate, also a fellow who happens to be the best swordsman in the Pirate Isles, and that is Keelan Stillwater. He needs him for some reason in order to accomplish his goal of becoming king of the pirates. Also in his way is Tanner Black, another pirate who is probably the most feared pirate around, and for good reason. That guy's pretty scary. But the real enemy actually may be coming from outside the Pirate Isles in the form of some powerful kingdoms that really their goal is to just end all pirates. So are these feuding pirates going to be able to get together in order to survive this onslaught? And this, as I said before, there's a lot of things to love here. Rob J. Hayes has a great voice, and especially if you do like grimdark and roguish characters who do some pretty awful things, sort of Abercrombie-ish, I guess, in that sense. They do awful things, but you kind of can't help rooting for them, that sort of thing. But I do think this one, in a way, does suffer a little bit from being a sequel and then being part one of a duology. In other words, there's some context here I feel that I'm missing a bit. I almost wish I had read the trilogy first, and this one does end where Loyalties Lie ends. I wouldn't exactly call it a cliffhanger, but at a point in the story where you get the feeling that we're on the cusp of some bigger stuff about to happen. Let's put it that way. So it's very much, you want to keep reading kind of thing. Whereas the other books, even if they're part of a series, deliver an ending where you can at least say, okay, if I fall off from the series here, it's okay. But this one, you want to keep reading, which is a good thing, but at the same time, the sense of completeness isn't quite there, I would say. So that may be, in just judging these individually, a factor in how I feel. But having said all that, where am I going to rank all these? Well, here we go. All right, so here we go. The hardest part is, as I said, ranking these wonderful books. Every single one of them is deserving of the status of SPFBO champion. But I got to do what I got to do here. My last task as a judge for SPFBO. So here it is. Number 10. Let's go backwards, I guess, because I'm going to give my full ranking here, and from 10 to 1. Number 10 is going to be Where Loyalties Lie by Rob J. Hayes. Fantastic book. Something's got to be number 10 here. So there it is. Number 9, The Thief Who Pulled on Trouble's Braids. Number 8, Rain and Ruin by J.D. Evans. And number 7, The Gray Bastards. Number 6, The Lost War. Number 5, Small Miracles. Number 4, Sword of Kaigen. Number 3, Murder at Spindle Manor. Number 2, Orconomics. And my number 1 for the Champions League is By Blood, By Salt. So there you have it. Those are my rankings for the SPFBO Champions League. Once again, it has been an honor and a privilege to be part of this contest, part of this community. But that is it from me for now. Till next time.